What if the security you desperately seek is the very cage that imprisons you? We are taught rituals to find peace, to make God move in our lives. But what if the true movement, the real miracle, is found not in the ritual, but in understanding the mind that performs it? There is one final place to apply this salt that changes everything. You must watch until the end to understand why. Threshold beliefs. Have you ever really considered why one performs such an act? To put salt at the threshold of one's home. The idea, the tradition handed down through generations, is one of purification, of protection. It is to keep the negative, the so-called evil, from entering one's sacred space. But please let us inquire into this together, not with judgment, but with simple, direct observation. What is this evil that we are so afraid of? Is it an external force, a spirit floating in the ether, waiting to cross your doorstep? Or is the fear itself the entity we are trying to keep at bay? The fear of the unknown, the fear of what might happen, the fear of losing what we believe we possess. So we create a barrier, a line of salt, a symbol. But look deeper. The moment you create a barrier, you have created division. You have created in here, which is safe, and out there, which is dangerous. You have created me and the other. And is not all conflict, all violence, all sorrow born from this fundamental division? The division between me and you, my family and your family, my country and your country, my belief and your belief. It all begins at this tiny symbolic threshold. We want to protect our home, which is understandable. But what is the home we are truly protecting? Is it the physical structure of wood and stone? Or is it the psychological structure of our beliefs, our comforts, our traditions, the house of the me? The me, the self, is a collection of memories, experiences, fears, and hopes. It wants, above all else, to continue. It seeks permanence, security. And so it invents rituals. It draws lines. It says, this I will accept and that I will reject. This constant effort to protect, to defend, to build walls is itself a state of conflict. It is a state of fear. So the very act designed to bring peace is an expression of underlying fear. You see the contradiction, surely. We are afraid, so we perform an act of separation, which only reinforces the sense of a threat from the outside. The real inquiry is not whether salt at the door works. The real inquiry is, why do I feel the need for a barrier at all? What am I so afraid of? When we really look at this fear, we see it is not a monster from the outside, it is born from the inside. It is the fear of loneliness, the fear of uncertainty, the fear of ending. So we busy ourselves with actions, with beliefs, with putting salt at the door, hoping that an external God will see our action and grant us safety. But what if the only God, the only sacred intelligence lies in understanding this mechanism of fear within ourselves? What if true safety is not found in building walls, but in seeing that there is nothing to wall out? The world is not separate from you. You are the world. Your consciousness, with its fear, its division, its search for security, is the consciousness of humanity. To understand this is to dissolve the threshold itself. Not the physical one, that is irrelevant, but the psychological one. The door of the mind stands open, no longer fearing what may enter. Because when there is observation without condemnation, without fear, then whatever arises, be it sorrow, jealousy, anxiety, is seen for what it is, a passing movement of thought, a reaction of memory. It is not an evil spirit to be barred. It is part of the texture of consciousness to be understood. In that understanding it dissolves. That is the only real purification. The mind that is no longer creating division has no need for a line of salt. It is in its very nature whole, undivided, and therefore peaceful. So the first place we are told to put salt is the doorway. But we see now, do we not, that the real doorway is the mind's perception, and the salt is not a mineral to be sprinkled, but the light of attention that we must bring to our own states of fear and division, to see how we create the very demons we are trying to exorcise. It is an arduous thing to do, far more demanding than any ritual. It requires a constant moment-to-moment awareness. But in this, there is a possibility of real freedom, a freedom from the known, from the traditions and fears that have bound mankind for millennia. Not a symbolic safety, but an actual state of being in which fear has no place to take root. That is the first and perhaps most profound transformation, consuming ideas. Now let us consider the second place, the kitchen. The kitchen is the heart of the home in one sense, is it not? It is the place of nourishment, of sustenance. We bring in raw ingredients from the outside world, and we transform them into something that gives us energy, that sustains our physical body. It is a process of consumption and transformation. The symbolism is potent. But again, we must look beyond the symbol, beyond the physical act of placing salt in the corners of a room, and inquire into the psychological parallel. What is the kitchen of the mind? What is it that we consume mentally every single day to sustain our sense of self? We consume ideas. We consume beliefs, dogmas, theories, and the words of others. From the moment we are born, we are fed. We are told what is right and what is wrong, what is sacred and what is profane, who we are and what we should strive to be. We are given pre-packaged meals of thought from our culture, our religion, our education, our family. We consume them because we are told they will nourish our spirit, that they will give us strength. We are told, believe in this and you will be saved. Follow this path and you will find enlightenment. Accept this doctrine and God will move in your life. And we accept. We consume it all, hoping for nourishment. But is it nourishment, or is it a subtle poison? When you accept another's conclusion, another's experience, have you not stopped thinking for yourself? Have you not simply substituted their authority for your own direct perception? You read a book that describes the taste of a mango. You can memorize the description, you can believe it with all your heart, you can defend that description against all others. But have you tasted the mango? It is the same with spirituality, with truth, with God. We consume the descriptions, the concepts, the second-hand words. We decorate the kitchen of our minds with these borrowed recipes for salvation. The act of putting salt in the kitchen is, symbolically, an act of preservation and purification. But what are we trying to preserve? We are trying to preserve the ideas we have been given, to keep them from spoiling, to protect them from the supposed contamination of doubt and inquiry. We salt them with faith. But a living truth does not need to be preserved. It is alive, new, fresh in every moment. It is the dogma, the dead idea that must be preserved in the salt of blind belief. We are afraid to let our beliefs spoil, because if they do, what will we have left? We will be left with what is, our own confusion, our own emptiness, our own sorrow, and we are terrified of that. So we cling to the recipe, we follow the instructions, we place the salt in the kitchen, we pray in a certain way, meditate in a certain posture, believe in a certain Savior. We are consuming, but we are not being nourished. We are becoming filled with the dead knowledge of others, not the living truth of our own discovery. The real spiritual nourishment comes not from consuming more ideas, but from the complete cessation of consumption. It comes from fasting, a mental fast, where for one moment you do not accept or reject, you do not believe or disbelieve. You simply look at your own consciousness without the filter of what you have been told. To look at your own anger, not what the sacred books say about anger. To look at your own greed, not what some guru has told you about desire. To look at the world directly, without the label, without the word. That is to taste the mango for yourself. That is true nourishment. It is to empty the kitchen of the mind of all the stored, preserved, salted away beliefs, and to stand in that emptiness. It is only in that emptiness, that silence, that something new, something real can be born. So the question is not where to put salt in your physical kitchen, but can you stop consuming the ideas that prevent you from seeing what is true? Can you cease being a second-hand human being and find out for yourself what lies beyond the word, beyond the belief? That is the real act of nourishment. Intimate illusions. The third place we are told to apply this salt is the bedroom. the most private, the most intimate of spaces. It is a place of rest, of vulnerability, of dreams. It is where we shed the public persona and are supposedly our true selves. It is also the space of relationship, of the profound and complex dance between two human beings. The traditional belief is that salt here will purify the space, protect the union, and ensure peace. Again, let us move past the superstition and look at the psychological reality it points to. What is it that we truly seek to purify in our most intimate lives? We bring so much into that space, do we not? We bring our loneliness, our desire for comfort and security. We bring the image we have of ourselves and the image we have of the other person. And we bring the image of what the relationship should be. These images are the real occupants of the room. I am not in relationship with you, the living, breathing, changing person. I am in relationship with the image I have built of you from my past experiences, from my pleasures and my pains. And you are in relationship with your image of me. So two images are trying to connect, trying to find communion, and they never can. How can they? An image is a dead thing, a thing of the past. This is the source of all conflict in relationship. The image I have of you fails to match who you are in this moment, and I am hurt, disappointed, angry. I try to force you to conform to my image, and you resist, and so the battle begins. The battle of will, of domination, of subtle and not so subtle violence. We want peace in our relationships, but our very approach creates war. We want to feel safe with another, to be completely secure in their love, so we demand promises, loyalty, fidelity. We create rules and expectations. This is another form of placing salt, is it not? We are trying to preserve the relationship, to purify it of uncertainty. But love is not a product of security. Love is not an arrangement of mutual comfort and gratification. That is a contract, a transaction. Love is something entirely different. It is a state of being in which the me, with its images, its demands, its fears, has ceased. When I look at you without the screen of my past, without my wants and my hopes, and I see you as you are in this moment, then there is a possibility of love. But this requires an extraordinary awareness, a continuous dying to the past, to every hurt and every pleasure that has built up the image of the other. So what are we really trying to cleanse from the bedroom with a pinch of salt? We are trying to cleanse our fear, the fear of being alone, the fear of being hurt, the fear of not being loved. This fear is what makes us build the images, make the demands, and ultimately destroy the very intimacy we crave. We want the other person to be the permanent source of our happiness, to fill our own inner emptiness. We make them responsible for our psychological well-being. This is a terrible burden to place on another, and it is a fundamental illusion. No one can save you from yourself. No one can give you a lasting sense of security. That security which is dependent on another is a form of bondage. True intimacy, then, is not the clinging of two lonely people. It is the coming together of two individuals who have understood their own loneliness and are no longer running from it. It is to be able to be with another without demanding anything from them psychologically, to give them complete freedom. And you can only do that when you are yourself free. So the purification of this intimate space does not happen with a ritual. It happens when you turn the light of observation on your own inner world of relationship, when you see the images you have built, when you understand the fear that drives your desire for security. In seeing all this clearly, without judgment, the images begin to fall away, the fear begins to dissolve, and in that space, something new and truly sacred can take place, seeing clearly. And the fourth location, the windows. The windows are the eyes of the home, the way we look out upon the world. We are told to place salt on the windowsills again, as a barrier, a means of purification for what we see, what enters our perception. The metaphor is almost too perfect, is it not? For what are our own eyes, our own senses, but the windows of the self? And how do we look through them? Do we see the world as it is, or do we see it through a thick film of accumulated dust and grime? The grime is our conditioning, it is our past, it is every conclusion, every judgment, every prejudice we have ever formed. When I look at a tree, I do not actually see the tree in its vibrant, living totality. I see the image of the tree, the word tree, the botanical classification tree. I see it through the screen of my knowledge. My mind immediately labels it, categorizes it, and moves on. The direct perception, the communion with the thing itself, is lost. I have seen the past, not the present. And so it is with everything. I look at a person, and I do not see them. I see the label: American, Christian, communist, friend, enemy. I see the symbol, not the human being. Our windows of perception are smeared with the salt of our experience. Salt can be a preservative, but on glass it obstructs, it crystallizes and distorts the view. And this is what our beliefs and conclusions do. My belief, your belief, acts as a distorting filter on reality. We look at the same world, but we see entirely different things because we are looking through different accumulations of grime on our windows. And then we fight about whose view is the correct one. We argue, we try to convince, we go to war over whose distortion is the truth. It is utter madness. The desire to purify what we see with a ritual is a complete misunderstanding of the problem. The problem is not what is outside the window. The world simply is. The tree is. The other person is. The problem is the window itself. The problem is the observer, the me, who is looking, who is laden with the past, with memory, with prejudice. So long as the observer is the past, what he sees will always be colored by the past. He can never see what is new, what is fresh. So the real spiritual work is not to put more things on the windowsill, to add another layer of belief, another ritual for protection. The real work is to clean the window. And how does one clean the window of perception? You cannot do it by force. You cannot scrub it with a new system, a new method, a new guru. That is simply replacing one kind of grime with another. The cleaning happens through awareness, through choiceless awareness, to be aware of your reaction to what you see, to notice the immediate label that arises in the mind, to see the judgment taking form, to observe the movement of your own conditioning. When you see a politician speak on television, can you listen without the immediate filter of I agree or I disagree? Can you just listen to the words, to the intention, to the fear or ambition behind them? When you meet someone from another culture, can you look at them without the cloud of everything you have ever been told about those people? It is an immensely difficult thing. It is to watch your own mind in operation without trying to correct it, without judging it, just to watch. In that very watching, in that light of pure attention, the grime begins to dissolve, the window begins to become clear. For the first time, you might see the tree as if you have never seen it before, the sheer wonder of it, the complexity of the bark, the movement of the leaves in the wind, and for the first time you might see another human being without the barrier of your judgment. In that seeing there is compassion, in that seeing there is love, not an idea, not a sentiment, but the actual state of undivided perception. So let us forget the salt on the windowsill. Let us be concerned with cleaning the very windows of our minds so that we may at last see what is true. Inner altar. We have looked at the doorway, the kitchen, the bedroom, and the windows. We have inquired into the psychological meaning behind these symbolic acts of purification. And now we come to the final place, the one which we are told holds the most power. The previous four are parts of a physical house. But what is the fifth? Where is it? It is not a place you can point to. It is not a room. The fifth place is the very center of the house itself. The house is you. And the center is the creator of all this illusion, all this fear, all this division. The fifth place is the altar of the self, the me. This is the source, the me, the ego, the thinker who believes he is separate from his thoughts, the experiencer who believes he is separate from his experience. This is the root of the desire for security, for permanence, for a God who will move on my behalf. This me is a structure built out of memory, out of time. It is a bundle of attachments, of fears, of cravings, of vanities. It is the one who says, I am lonely, I am afraid, I want to be happy, I believe. It is the observer who looks through the dirty window. It is the dweller who fears what is outside the door. It is the entity that creates and lives with images in relationship. So what does it mean to put salt in this place? Salt in a wound stings. It is a sharp, intense, purifying pain. To put salt on the altar of the self is to apply the sharp, stinging light of ruthless self-observation to the very structure of the I. It is to question everything you believe yourself to be, to ask, who is this I that is thinking? What is this self? Is it anything more than a memory, a word? To look at your pride, your ambition, your desire for recognition, not to destroy it, but simply to see it, to understand its movement, to feel the sting of seeing your own pettiness, your own violence, your own fear, without turning away. This is the highest form of meditation, not sitting in a certain posture and repeating a word which only dulls the mind, but to be intensely aware of the movement of the self in every moment of life, in conversation, in solitude, when you are insulted, when you are flattered, to watch this me arise and assert itself. Most of us spend our entire lives decorating this altar. We put flowers of achievement on it. We burn the incense of self-pity. We offer up the sacrifices of others for its sake. We polish it and defend it. The final, most potent act of spirituality is not to decorate it, but to observe it so completely that it reveals its own emptiness. When you bring this flame of attention, this purifying salt, to the core of your being, something extraordinary happens. When the mind sees the illusion of the self, when it sees that the thinker is not separate from the thought, that the observer is the observed, then the whole structure of the me collapses. Not through effort, not through will, but because its own illusory nature is perceived. And in this collapse there is silence. Not a forced silence, but a silence that is an absence of the chattering, frightened self. And what moves in that silence? This is what they mean by watch God move. It is not some external deity performing a miracle for you because you completed a ritual. The movement is the very blossoming of intelligence, of compassion, of love that occurs when the self is not. It is the movement of life itself, unhindered by the psychological blockages of the me. Truth can only come into being when the mind is silent, and the mind can only be silent when it has understood the whole process of its own becoming, the structure of the self. This is the inward revolution. The fifth place is the only place that matters, and the salt is the painful, liberating light of pure awareness. When you apply it there, you do not need to watch for God to move. You are that movement. You are that life. The entire journey, you see, was never about your house. It was never about salt. It was about turning your attention from the outward symbol to the inward reality. It was a map leading you back to the only place where true transformation is possible, within yourself. To be free is not to have a protected home, but to have a mind that needs no protection because it is no longer afraid. That is the only peace that has any meaning, the only divinity that is real. I clicked this expecting a simple list of household tips, and instead I feel like my entire understanding of myself has been turned inside out. The part about the windows of perception, and especially the inner altar, it's devastatingly true. I've spent my whole life polishing that altar without ever realizing it. Thank you. This wasn't a video, it was a mirror. I have a lot to think about.